Hello folks, this is David Hurley of EasyChessTips.com, your pub chess bluffer, talking to you on Sunday the 13th of September 2020, and the topic for today is another look at the Maróczy Defence Pawn Grab. I'm calling it another look because earlier last week, a few days ago, I played a game against my regular opponent, Dr. M, in which he was white and I was black. And through transposition, I set up with what is called the Maróczy defense. It's actually a version of the Piak defense. And a similar situation occurred in the fifth move as occurred in a game that we played back in April when, again, I was black and Dr. M was white. And it's a fifth move, bishop to g5, that opens up a nice opportunity for black to grab a pawn and grab an early advantage. Now, back in April, I completely missed this opportunity that was laid before me. I didn't notice it during the game. It was only in post-game analysis that I picked it up. I then blogged about it on easychesstips.com. I had another look at that blog post a few weeks ago, and I'm happy to say that while my opponent completely forgot about that situation, I managed to keep it lodged in the old noggin. And last Wednesday, we played again with me as black, my opponent as white, and we played into a similar line where in the fifth move, Dr. M went bishop to g5, and I was hoping that he would do it because I had realized that we are moving towards this situation that occurred back in April. So I will show you again what it is and how to deal with it to your advantage if you are black, and then I'll go through what happened in the rest of our game. So we are playing online. And we started playing a few months ago. We started playing on chess.com because it's a very good platform for playing online games. And here is how things went. My opponent was white and opened with e4. And the little symbols are very useful. So we're obviously with the one e4, we are still in book moves. I replied with my repertoire move of d6, and then we have d4. And now, strictly speaking, the Maróczy defense, the second move of the Maróczy defense will be e5, but a repertoire that I've moved into, the 1d6 in response to anything repertoire, has knight to f6 as the second move. I do have a second book, actually the first book I bought on the 1d6 opening system, which does go straight into e5, but I shifted my attention to a different repertoire book, and I'm going with one. I go most of the time with two, knight to f6. We then have knight to c3, still in the book. And now in my third move, I do the d5 move, which by transposition brings us back to this Maróczy defense. Now, it's the next two moves where I realized I may have this nice opportunity to gain an early advantage because my opponent did not take the pawn, which is one of the recommended moves in this situation. Instead, what's happening here? Instead, he advanced his pawn. Why are we not getting any response from the chessboard? Okay, there we go. We're back on track. So then I played out my bishop to e7. And it's here where I thought if my opponent brings out his bishop to g5, then the Maróczy defense pawn grab will come into play. And that is just what he did. And you can see this is a mistake. A bad move that immediately worsens your position. And the reason is that I can simply, well, let me show you what I did. I simply took advantage of the situation by taking that pawn. And at first sight, it looks as if this pawn is very well defended because the pawn is defended by the pawn, by the knight, and by the queen. But the problem is that this bishop is unprotected. So the knight can simply go across, grab the pawn, offer himself up, and if the pawn or the knight or indeed the queen takes the knight, the bishop can simply grab the bishop. And so it's a bishop for a knight. It's opened up my position rather nicely for my bishops, and I have grabbed that all-important central pawn. So that is indeed what happened. I grabbed the central pawn, that is to say. However, my opponent decided to take the bishop with the bishop. Under these circumstances, probably the best move. And I then took the bishop with my knight. So my knight comes back away from this threat here of the pawn or the knight or the queen, grabs the bishop. And so as a result, I now have a clear advantage. I am a pawn to the good, central pawn majority, and things have opened up for me to continue with a nice bit of development. So that is the Maróczy pawn grab, the Maróczy Defence Pawn Grab in a nutshell. Okay, for the rest of this video, let's have a look at how things went from there. If I move this over here somewhere, make it a bit smaller, there. We can see we are here, and I actually did make some bad moves in the middle part of the game, but thankfully for me, so did my opponent, and so I quickly recovered. And the verdict of this game was that I was never in threat. I was never under any serious threat. I'm quite pleased with that accuracy rating. Perhaps if I played a bit better here, I could have scored a 99% accuracy. Not too bad. So, how did this game go on from here? My opponent did give a rueful chuckle, but he develops a castle. So the bishop is obviously having a look at this pawn. Not that it would take it immediately, as the king was covering, but it's quite acceptable, quite okay to castle into the line of the bishop here. This is quite a common, as you can see, it's given a best move rating, so no problem there with that castle. The queen comes out. This is merely a good move, i.e. an okay move, but not the best. Perhaps develop a minor piece would be good. In this game, this castle over here is asleep, by the way. Nothing much happens to this castle. Nothing happens. The castle is asleep. So anyway, my opponent is looking at ways to double down on this apparently weak pawn, but it's well enough guarded. It's guarded by the king and the rook, so it's not a real threat. We can continue with our development. Excellent, maybe not best, but yeah, moving the bishop out to challenge. I have this central advantage. I have a material advantage, so I don't mind swapping off anyway, while also developing a piece. There we are, the good old c6 move, one of the repertoire moves. The knight takes, the queen takes, all fine for me. The bishop takes. The more we keep taking, the better. I like it. Perhaps my opponent is thinking that he's doubling my pawns, but what I get with this pawn structure here is a massive, well, not massive, a significant central pawn majority. I'm perfectly okay with that. There is, of course, also now I take with the tempo in the sense that the rook is attacking the queen, so something needs to happen over there. The queen retreats. I develop. The knight develops. Move up my rook. Castles, double up the rooks. What have we got here? Okay, yeah, this may be, this is, so this is the beginning perhaps of my mid-game fade. Next year, I'm going to work on my middle game. But for now, let's see what's going on here. So these moves are merely okay. Well, excellent is probably good. Good is merely okay. Now, so I'm quite pleased to see that. As you can see, it's not the best move. It's a blunder. Well, it's just called an inaccuracy. It's quite, no, it's a mistake. Okay, I'd consider that a bit of a blunder. This pawn is attacking the queen, but the queen doesn't have to move away at all because we have this move. And why is that a fine move? Because the queen is pinning the pawn to the king. Another questionable move here, but this is my mistake. Okay, so I actually make a complete blunder here. The queen is under attack. What I see is that the queen and the rook are both under attack. So effectively, although this is a mistake according to the engine, what I saw, and this is where both of us as players have a lot to learn still. What I saw was that the knight had forked the rook and the queen, and at the same time my rook was under attack from this pawn. So if I move my queen off this file, then the rook falls. So I thought I'd better cut my losses, or my approaching losses, by simply cutting out the knight with my rook. So let me do that, and let's see what the engine recommends instead. It recommends a simple move of the queen over here. So if we do that instead, what we're doing is quite a nice way to get away from the knight and pins the knight to the queen. However, surely he can just take, can't he? What happens if he just takes? Like so. What happens now? Okay, so that was the best move. And in here, I can simply pick up the knight with the rook. Let's do that. Pick up the knight with the rook. Later we could go check and grab the queen. Does he like it or not? Okay, no comment from the chess machine. That was merely okay. I should have come in and gone check. Okay. Let's come in and go check. He doesn't have many choices, does he, for the king? Doesn't have many choices. Okay, that was the best option of not many. Aha, yes, indeed, that's better, isn't it? That order is much better. Okay, because now we can threaten checkmate. Threaten checkmate practically is, isn't it? Can he avoid checkmate? Can he avoid checkmate? 21, queen takes f3. He can only avoid it by taking f3. Yes, of course. The answer is yes, he can, but it rather hurts. So there we go. That sequence of moves is something I missed. As weaker players often do, I was rather overawed by the threat of that knight forking. The knight fork. So I took the knight with my rook. Let's just go back to remind us. I took the knight with my rook, even though I didn't need to. And so now we're not quite back at parity. There's still a small advantage on my part. I then retreat my rook again. It's not ideal. I should be bringing forward my knight. Okay, but this is a blunder. Now, did I notice that this was a blunder? I think I may have done. What did I do? I brought forward the knight. Okay, these moves are getting more and more questionable. So I bring up the knight. The king seeks to escape, but I can now check the king, push him back. The king goes back. There's no choice. Give him a check again. Oh dear, the queen has come in. And this is a disastrous move. It's only called a mistake, but I can now jump in with a nice easy check. The king is forced back. Check down here. Goodbye, queen. Oh dear, how sad. Never mind. That is the end of that. So there we are, a pretty good game from my point of view, except for that mid-game, the mid-game flop. I must strengthen my mid-game. But the key point for today's easy chess tip is the Maróczy Defence Pawn Grab. Look out for those kind of combinations where you can grab a pawn, surprise your opponent by grabbing a pawn, because what it does, it reveals an attack on an unguarded piece, which means that if your knight is taken, the piece falls, and so you have won a pawn. Okay, that's it from me for now. David Hurley of EasyChessTips.com. Until the next time.